Okay, three things. Thing number one, that new Taylor Swift re-release, gas or not? What do you think? Thing number two, I may or may not have an op on the r/Rainbow Six Pro League Reddit page mod team. It took down my post, even though it was distinctly about the topic of the subreddit. And thing number three, and the thing that we're really here to discuss. So Thinkingnade made his looking for team post. He didn't specifically say looking for team, but in effect he did. So he says, unrestricted free agent. My retirement post should have been a break tweet. To be honest, I've been itching to play the whole time, and I am still motivated as ever to play and win. If you're interested in me, please DM me. Okay, so who is this? If you're not aware, this is a former member of Space Station Gaming. He was on the roster when they won SI 2020, and until his release not too long ago, until he left the roster, he was the longest standing member of that roster, the original player left standing that was there from the beginning. It was him, and then Rampy joined at one point, and then Bosco, and then Fultz, and then Hot and Cold, and now Sky's on the roster instead of Thinkingnade. And so his return, well, his attempt to return reminds me of three players. Number one, NVK. And, well, that might make you sweat a little bit if you're a Thinkingnade fan, because NVK's return has not been prosperous just yet, and maybe he'll improve, but he did struggle quite a bit in his first stage back. Maybe his only stage back. We'll see what really happens. But in stage 3 of the NAL, in the one he's played recently, yeah, he did kind of struggle, and he is, along with the rest of XSET, up for relegation at the moment. We'll have to see what happens in that match. And anyways, the reason that NVK and Thinkingnade I thought were similar in this regard was that they're both world champions who took a little bit of a break and came back, and that's really the only thing that brings them together. Also, they played a lot of Thatcher, both of them, I guess. So I guess I'll show that in a second. There's a stat thing that Grant posted. So right, NVK won the Six Invitational back in 2017, so like the first one when, well, of course, competition was a lot less steep, and then nearly won it the next year in 2018, making it to the grand final, but losing to Penta, and then, which would become G2, which would become nothing eventually because that roster is completely gone. But anyways, so Thinkingnade, not gone nearly as long as NVK was. NVK was gone for a really long time. Thinkingade's only been gone a couple months, and I guess that's pretty much all there is to it. Number two, I guess Hot and Cold. It reminds me a little bit. Of course, Hot and Cold ends up on Space Station. Well, up to the present time, we'll see what he does in the future. But and then Thinkingnade played on Space Station in the past. But if Thinkingnade comes back and plays a different role and kills it, it could be similar to the Hot and Cold situation. So Hot and Cold got dropped from Dark Zero when they wanted to make a change, and then he went to Mirage and was incredible on their team, and then he went to Space Station and he was even more incredible. So maybe we'll see Thinkingnade join Beast Coast, XSET, Mirage, like another Pro League team, maybe even whatever 10th team if they decide to finally add a 10th team. We'll have to see about that. Maybe we'll see him on a different role, because throughout history he was generally a flank watch player, and then towards the end he was playing some hard support, and then on defense he plays a lot of mute, so just sort of a flex-ish sort of role, sort of anchored, but can sort of do different things. Mute, very versatile operator. Anyways, so yeah. And that remains to be seen entirely if it is going to actually be reminiscent of the Hot and Cold thing. We'll have to see if maybe he comes back and does really, really well. And not that he ever did like poorly before, but not always the flashiest of player, because not always the flashiest position he was put in. And so number three I thought of was Skies, and this is the person who directly replaced him. And also kind of similar, it just got to a point on, well, a little bit different, I suppose. On Dark Zero, Skies wanted to retire, and for Space Station, they sort of framed it as him retiring, but I mean, they wanted to pick up Skies, and whenever, they usually just give you the option, hey, do you want to say that you wanted to retire or whatever, as opposed to, hey, we're booting you from the roster. And I'm sure it was an amicable situation. He'd been there for a really long time, and he probably thought, it's probably fine enough time to go, and maybe he was the most, quote unquote, deserving to go. But it was a great roster. They had just come off an incredible stage 2 of the NAL, but then a little bit disappointing in Mexico, where they made it out of groups, but they didn't make it out of their first round of the playoffs. They didn't make it past the quarterfinals. So they wanted to improve. And then it was mostly a lateral movement in regards to NAL. They even got one fewer point, I suppose, but they looked pretty much just as dominant. But you can't really move up considering how dominant they were in stage 2. And then I guess it didn't really help them too much internationally either, because they just got to the same place again. And I guess they got out of their group at second place this time as opposed to first place, but their group last time was only a 3-team group. So they were in the group of death here, and they made it out second place, but then they just lost in the quarterfinals. And they did lose to the runner-up of the event, so not too terrible. So, you know, technically, if you wanted to be really speculative, you could say maybe Space Station was like the third best team at the event, but then they did lose like twice to Damwon Kia, who was also in the semifinals. So maybe you say that they're the fourth team. Anyways, you could say a lot of things. Probably they're like, you know, they were top 8 of the event, but maybe not top 4. Okay, so right, Skies. It reminds me of a little bit because I mean he retired off Dark Zero, and then he took just like one stage off and now came back. And Skies didn't even like actively try to came back. He just sort of got the offer from Space Station, and he thought that was an offer too good to turn down. And Thinkingnade is saying he wants to come back, but yet as of yet doesn't have an offer as far as we know. Of course, this post was made yesterday, today being November 15th. And so the Skies thing, not too terribly similar. They play like a little bit of the same roles. I mean, clearly Skies like directly replaced him, but it just reminded me of a little bit, and mostly for the reason that Skies was literally the person who replaced him. So okay, that was just a little bit of, you know, background or information on the matter that maybe you are interested to hear or were not interested to hear. So let's just look at this other thing really quickly. So Grant from DZ, who has an absolute arsenal of stats at his disposal or whatever, always be posting stats. One of the most unbreakable records in Siege, career Thatcher kills. Thinkingnade 421 Thatcher kills. So yeah, like Renshiro still plays, and you know, maybe he's playing some Thatcher, but because Thatcher is so often banned now, it's like Thinkingade's never going to be caught, right? Unless they big nerf Thatcher or change it or something so that he's not banned anymore. Or, I mean, if for some reason they removed like banning or something, yeah, like he's never going to be caught. Laxing also, you know, even 30 kills behind Renshiro. And then Spark, I don't think plays anymore, and MBK is playing at the moment, but you know, anyways. And then also second in mute kills, and this is the most much more fought over record, I suppose, because mute is played all the time and very rarely banned, and he's in second place, and Cameraman is just over him, I guess. And Cameraman, assuming he played any amount of mute at Sweden, and this is including Sweden stats, then I suppose he just passed him. And even if it's not including Sweden, like it still must have been recent if he's only over him by 3. So yeah, I guess when you think of the Thatcher mute main, that really is just Thinkingnade. And this was in response to when he retired, I guess, but also I think this just came back up in my feed because, I mean, no, I don't know why. Somebody must have retweeted it or whatever. Because I thought this was more recent when Thinkingnade made the looking for team post. So yeah, I guess that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about in the video. I hope Thinkingnade finds a new home. He always seemed like a cool player, a good player, and he always seemed like a really cool guy whenever I would see him just moving around on stage and in any sort of interview or whatever. So good luck to him. Hopefully we see him in the NAL next stage, and that's going to be it for the video.